The faces change, but the system that allows the faces to operate with impunity and operate as they wish in the service of capital, in the service of return on investments, are different faces, younger faces. They may be a little bit more hip. They may be in the public space, and you see them all the time, and they look great in the public space and all those things. So those faces are the same. They're the same. The idea is the faces may have changed, but the motives are still the same.
Of my city and my city council, they have fell short of its goals to include the less fortunate in their projects. They are out there in droves, looking for a place to call their own. But yet, the infrastructure of our city is talking about spending $100 million to improve the roads so they can build a stadium. What do you think they could do with $100 million for the homeless people? Get them out of those shanties. Get them out of public showers. Give them a place to stay. Give them a voice. One thing, give them dignity like they deserve.
Let me just say this very quickly. The ILWU is a very unusual labor organization because the ILWU has a long history in the struggle for economic and social justice, whether it's in the fight for civil rights, ending apartheid in South Africa, supporting the African liberation struggle, opposing military juntas in Latin America. We have been front and center. We've also been front and center in terms of supporting the black community, making jobs available to working people, in particular people of color and women. We have a proud, proud history. The ILWU Local 10 replaced the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, providing black men an opportunity to earn a living wage. Yes. One of the most important things that I think people should understand about this meeting here today, we're not anti-euthanasia. I was at the World Series in 1989 when the big one hit. My wife and I had just gone through the turnstiles when the big one hit. Mama Free had an earthquake in 1989. The season took it over. This is not about hating on the open A's. This is about advocating that the open A's stay where they are, on 120 acres, with proximity near AC Transit, BART, Amtrak, Oakland International Airport, 2 freeways, 120 acres. They want to leave that location and go to 50 acres of the 3rd busiest port on the West Coast. And you want to know something? I know.
It is a daily struggle to find a way to support our families, to find a way to give our families a better future than what we have built for ourselves, to fundamentally give them a sense of hope, which is one of the pillars of each and every one of our lives. Hope. Something better tomorrow. Something easier tomorrow. Something more rewarding tomorrow. And we stand here today because some individuals, following greed and wealth, they want to take away from us that hope. They want to limit the manner in which we earn our daily bread, as is spelled out in the Bible, and change it for we, the A's, as the preamble to the Constitution. We, the Fisher family, as the preamble to the Constitution. No, brothers and sisters, the Constitution spells it out clearly. We, the people, we have to stand together so that the West Oakland community does not become the parking lot of the A's.
Around the world, and I might add, at great sacrifice. I now bring you Brother Danny Glover, renowned actor, activist, director, producer, above all, humanitarian. Brother Danny Glover.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I want to thank certainly Acts Full Gospel Church for allowing the community which it serves to use their facility to our own truth-telling. Our own truth-telling. It's beautiful knowing someone over 50 years, like I know Clarence Buzz Thomas. All right. Because I remember those days when we were going to San Francisco State Extension, and we'd walk up all the way up Powell. You know that steep part of Powell Street, the hilly part of Powell Street, we'd walk up there going to our class. In a sense, what we brought to that journey was a new vision of ourselves, a different vision of ourselves. Certainly, when we brought to that journey, as we began to climb that hill, we were climbing another hill in terms of resistance, another hill in terms of building and visualizing a new place for not only us ourselves individually, but for our respective communities. And as we sit here, we move a little bit slower. And just as the drill team, they got it up after a while, didn't they? It started out slow. I thought they hadn't practiced, but they got it going. They got it going. But we've seen too much. Let me say that again. We've seen too much. We know too much. We know the glorious moments in history of the city. Particularly, it came through working people. I mean, we all are situated in the extraordinary work that working people did to build this city. ILWU stands out, but in so many other ways. I'm old enough to remember when working people went on strike on Van Ness Street in San Francisco in order to get black people jobs on those and selling cars and how people mobilized about that. So we know too much, and those of us who sit here today remember too much as well. I remember, it was too, as we talked before, I remember when we were going to meetings for the Western Addition Community Organization, Waco, as they were fighting gentrification, or as they termed it then, redevelopment. That's the term they use then. People mobilized. I remember going to those meetings on Monday, Tuesday night, and we see Yerowati, Japanese descent, would be at those meetings as a part of the community. We all knew Yerowati when he was at the YMCA up on Geary, past Fillmore, when Fillmore was a vibrant community. A lot of us don't know the fact that the proximity to the black community migrating here to San Francisco, and the Japanese community were right alongside each other. We don't remember that. You know, some of us were born after the internment of Japanese citizens in 1943 under Roosevelt. So we have so much that we remember, but we know in the course of all of it, it is struggle. The faces change, but the system that allows the faces to operate with impunity and operate as they wish in the service of capital, in the service of return on investments, are different faces, younger faces. They may be a little bit more hip. They may be in the public space, and you see them all the time, and they look great in the public space and all those things. So those faces are the same. They're the same. The idea is the faces may have changed, but the motives are still the same. How do we now privatize the public space? How do we privatize the area that we have ownership to and claim ownership? And how do we now use whatever means we can, under any circumstances, devoid of any participation of ordinary citizens, to transform the city? To transform the city in the same way in which they transformed San Francisco. Nobody's hating on the Bays. I love the Hayes. I love the Hayes. I love By the Blue. I remember when Charlie Finley tried to get him to change his name to True Blue. He said, no. I never Blue Blue. I remember Dave Stewart. You know what's something about the A's, Reggie Jackson, Catfish Hunter, it's Sal Bando. And something about the A's, they always take these projects of people who you would thought were reckless or whatever, and took them and made them great ball players. They didn't take the #1 draft choices or the #1 guy. They take these guys and then reshape their careers, and they become legendary. We all remember those who love the A's. And it was more exciting than the Giants, even though the Giants had Willie Mays and Willie McCovey, Orlando Cepeda, Philippe Lou, and et cetera, et cetera. Juan Marichal, the Dominican dandy. Even though the fact that there was something about them because their aura was, an imaginative aura, was grounded in this community. And we identified with them. So there's no trouble. There's no hate. But if we look at the situation, you know, we've all talked about, and I know the first thing we talk about is what is happening in West Oakland, which is now referred to as San Francisco East. Yeah. I mean, that's what people call it, San Francisco East. We saw the journey. We know the journey. You can't lie to us with what has been of working class people having homes, buying homes, having those homes and having jobs to support those homes and build families and support the community. That's what's there. We have the legendary ball players that come out of McClimers, right there. You know, I mean, some of the best in the history of them come out of Oakland. So we saw that. Then we have all the culture, the rich culture of blues. Not in San Francisco, the blues was here in Oakland. Thank you. So we remember all that. And we know that what we have to do is that understand that everything we do at this moment is fighting for the generations that come. For those people that come. For those people who live here and build a diverse community. There were times when Oakland was 50% half black, half African American. Right here. Those of us who came here and built and worked and everything. Those are the truth. That is the truth that we hold on to. How we take this moment at this moment and say, no, not on our watch. It can't be on our watch. That you're going to take these jobs. Jobs are the best blue-collar jobs that are around here. Take these jobs. You've already gentrified most of West Oakland. And watch the church. Look at the place in West Oakland. We have what? Working people. At one point in time, parents who had opportunities, who came here, who build families, raise families and everything else. And then what we have then is that those children don't get the opportunities that their parents have. They don't have the jobs that their parents have. And then we have this introduction, one of the most vicious and insidious introductions of anything that I ever said, crack cocaine. Crack, oh my God. You know, if the devil didn't create that, I don't know who created it. Crack cocaine. It took everything. It took so much of all that had been built and all that had been the growth and all that love and all that stuff that was a part of what we are and what we made and what we contributed. It took that. And then at that particular point in time, we have homelessness and gentrification at the same time. Now this is very interesting. You have homelessness where people who can no longer live in the houses that they may have grown up and lived in the communities where they were growing up, and they have to reside on the street in makeshift tent cities and everything else, or anything they could put over to cover themselves from the weather and everything else. And at the same time, you got gentrification. You have the gentrification where people can't afford to even buy the houses. And those who rent, who are scraping and keep on and rent their houses, are forced out of it because of the gentrification. Come on, we see this. So this is, if it was that private space that we had, that public space that connected to our private relationship with the city, with ourselves, with our community, with our identity, we see that dissolve. We see all those things dissolve right in front of our own eyes within our generation. And then what we see now is that the carpetbaggers come in.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's what they are. They're the same, they're the carpetbaggers. The carpetbaggers that roam the South after doing reconstruction, the carpetbaggers come in and they're cleaning up and everything else. And they got money. And they go to the tennis match. You know, they do this, they do that. They have this real public relationship that build this persona about them caring about that, caring. And not only is that they have that persona, they give the impression, because they support charter schools, the charter schools, at the same time, in privatizing education. Check this out, look this out. This is what we have to take and preach and cover and tell the truth. This is the truth session. This half the truth. What did Baldwin say? When this country, when we cannot tell ourselves the truth of our past, we become trapped in it. And we're trapped in it. It's happening. The film won't never be the same. The Fillmore doesn't look the same. All that's gone now. It's gone. Somebody said, well, let's trade this one building, but it's not the same. It doesn't have the vibrancy of people moving up. It was always people moving. I don't care if it's 1934, 1946, or whatever. People were moving. People were doing things. People were building, trying to build and seeing their future, and seeing that reality in their future in a sense. And there's always those people in the public space who don't believe it, or don't trust it, or don't want it to happen, you know, or have some ideas of what it should be. We have to work. We have to work so hard, and I mean that. I grew up on Central Street and Hayes in San Francisco. That's where I grew up. From the time I was 11 years old. Before that, I lived in Hunters Point in the projects. I lived in the Army Street projects in Army and 3rd, where Etta James lived. I lived in the 19th Street projects, just below Potrero Hill, until my parents put together enough money to scrape enough money to buy a little house to crowd all 7 of us in it. But we had a home. We had roots in there. I lived from that place right now, I lived 12 blocks from there, in the same community. In the same community. It's been gentrified. The people who when I bought the house just before my 29th birthday in 1975, when I bought the duplex, rented it out to have some income so I could pay it, lived upstairs. When I bought that, in a sense, I bought it from a couple who unfortunately were getting a divorce, and they were selling the house, unfortunately, but they worked at the post office. They knew my parents. The woman right up the street who owned her house and a house across the street knew my parents because they worked at the post office. So the leverage they had was they had jobs, they had good jobs, but as I said before, their children weren't able to repeat that, the reality of it. And now, if I had to buy on that street I live in, that same house, I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford it. But that's the other reality. So, so many of those who are my age or who are coming up and who want some sort of find identity and root in where they live, we love Oakland. We love not the age here. We love the age, but we love Oakland. We love it. I love San Francisco. So we have to picture. We have to make our stand. Now, this is supposed to be a rally. I know it's Saturday. I know it's a holiday weekend, and there are many things to do. We're thinking about barbecuing, and it's beautiful out, you know, and getting the family together. But there's something about the work we have to do, and that work has to deal with how we embrace policy. And that is from everything else. If indeed we're looking at education, we're looking at not only the fact that the charter schools are depriving resources and taking resources from the public education system. And we know that the private school, we know that real education for a community and uplifting people in a community, our children and everything, preparing them as citizens in the 21st century, means that we have to reach from the bottom for those at the lowest in order to raise the boat for everybody. That's what we have to do. So we have to look at the legislation. You take when we were in New Orleans, Gus Newport's here. We were in New Orleans after Katrina. You know the oldest teachers union in the South, in the old South, was the teachers union in New Orleans, established in the 1930s, ostensibly to get better pay for black teachers. It was eviscerated. They don't even exist anymore. You know, what happened? Charter schools. And some of the worst charter school legislation in the country is in New Orleans and Louisiana. And what has happened to that? What has happened to the collapse of that? That's the direction. So we have to understand where we are, how they see the future, and how we want to see the future. And we have to organize our struggles beyond that. We have to know every single thing about policy. If policy is going to be this rebuild American schools, then we have to know every single thing. If policy cannot be different than the policy in the past, where the states, money is going to the states, and they've done whatever they want to do with it. If it doesn't come with direct federal action in which those people who are in need, those people who we have to work with and we have to uplift, then it fails. This country has never had a national education plan. Never had a national education plan. So we have to look at every single thing from that moment right here. It's just audacious that you have the homeless problem that you have. They're talking about spending $100 million for infrastructure. It's audacious with the homeless problem that we have. We have only here in Oakland that 7% of the housing, new housing, is for affordable houses. That's our, and what does affordable housing mean?
Yeah, right.
What does affordable housing mean?
Right.
Those are the questions we have to ask in detail. And we have to stand on our principle, the fact that we are right, and we're on the right side of history. We are on the right side of history. They will not determine what side of history that we're on. We're on the right side of history. We who sit in this room and those who are allies out here on the right side of history. You want to create jobs? Then fight for Tell the billionaires to fight for programs in which you can refurbish parks, in which you can refurbish infrastructure. If you want to create jobs, then that. If we want to create jobs, you have to tell our unions, you have to fight for that. You have to fight for that in the ballot office. You have to fight the ballot. You have to fight for that in the offices of your congressional leaders, state and federal and local leaders. Fight for that. That's how you create jobs. Rebuild this crumbling infrastructure, not provide some sort of playground for people to play baseball. You know what I'm saying? To play baseball? Come on. Or to play football? Come on. We saw what happened when the 49ers stadium, which is now in Santa Clara, not in San Francisco anymore. We saw what happened when the Super Bowl came here. Right under the freeway, where all the homeless encampments were. Mysteriously, they just disappeared. Now the game is being played in Santa Clara. You know what I'm saying? But they had to beautify the city and remove those unwanted in the city. That's what's happening. We're removing the unwanted here. Those who are expendable are not necessary. Their stay here was only temporary, but however gloriously they made this stay, how much that stay here, however powerfully they created the institutions of love and caring and community here, they're expendable. They're not necessary in the new image created by those others. So we got to fight. We used to say in the days back when we were supporting South Africa, supporting the independence and end of colonialism in Portuguese, a luta continua. A luta continua. The struggle continues. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Brother Danny Glover, please. Let's hear it for Brother Danny Glover. He came here from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Before that, he was in Ghana. He's a man of the people.